you know. And so from one perspective, you can't really blame people for just being what they are. From a different perspective, if, for example, I'm an alcoholic and you come to me and you say, Amir, I'm an alcoholic, let's go and drink together. I say, listen, I'm a recovering alcoholic. You're still in its cradle. I am out, but once in a while I look at the cradle and I see my past. Okay? I try the best I can to help you walk away from that particular thing. You know. Anyways, I lost my train of thought. But yeah.
The question I have asked you this before, is going back to your point of with everything going on in the world, and you're someone who wants to seek like mentorship, or maybe looking for a teacher, and I think there's so much out there. How do you know, like, when to use discernment? How do you know how to choose?
I don't think you'll ever know. You know, it's like, you know, you go out with someone, and initially, like everything else under the sun, it's casual. As you spend time, you create history. And now, if you like the history, the stories that live inside that history, you become attached to the history, to those narratives. And those histories and narratives are related to the person you're going out with. And then at a certain point, he looks at you and says, I love you. And you look at him and say, I love you too. And then a couple of weeks later, he brings you a ring, marry me. And now you say, okay, well, how do you know this is the right person for you? You don't really know. Now, if you're 20, there is so much growing for you to do. And you have no idea if you're going to be the same person when you're 30 or 35 or 40. So at any time, the rug under your feet could be pulled away. Okay? So you don't know. I think if you were to follow the bumper sticker of Chuang Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, the Taoist, if you want to find a good teacher, if you want to find a teacher, be a really, really, really good student. And if you want to be a good student, make sure that doubt is something that you're carrying with yourself all the time. You doubt yourself, you doubt your decision-making abilities, you also doubt the people who are trying to give you advice. You know, some of it may be luck, some of it may be, you know, just what sort of a student you are. Some students simply want, I suppose, a GPS. They would just want to be told. There comes a point where some students say, you know, I'm tired of being told. Thank you, I'll take care of it. Thank you. It's okay, I'll do it with my feet. Thank you, you're very kind, thank you. Thank you. No, it's good. They'll dry up, and they'll become sticky.
Yes.
And they have to mop the entire campus. Let's do a hypothetical, if you don't mind. Let's say after class, you come to me and you say, Amir, I've been in this class for the past like 10 weeks. And there have been moments where I've been inspired. There have been moments where I'm excited. And sometimes throughout the day when I go home, I think about some of the things you say. And then your image comes to mind. And then, you know, I have read all these self-help books. And it seems like you fit one of those characters or profiles, you know, that, are you a teacher? Can I be your student? Now, there are, you know, some complexities here. First, compliments are something that people always enjoy. So when you come to me and you say, oh, Amir, you're so great. Well, the first thing that you need to understand, something about me is tingling. You know, I feel really good about myself, you know. Second, you reflect back to me what I want myself to be. I want to think of myself as someone wise, intelligent, insightful, intuitive, and you validate all that for me. So that in itself is great for me. Now, if you were to add a pinch of arrogance, a pinch of pride, a pinch of, I don't know, whatever incompetencies I may have within, I say, yes, Naomi, I can be your teacher. Here's my phone number, here's my address, come to the house around 7:30. And then I'll just, dangle you for the next 5, 6 years, giving you all this philosophy. And by then you're like a 40-year-old woman. No husband, no children, no degrees, nothing. And then you realize, like Hermann Hesse's book, Siddhartha, that you're no wiser than when you were 2. In fact, I have opened your eyes to some things, and now that you see, you're burdened, and you can't unburden yourself, and your entire existence becomes miserable. Okay? And the truth is, eventually, all students have to figure things out on their own. No one can give you anything. It's very much like the movie The Matrix. Morpheus can only show you the door, but you have to have the interest to grab on the knob, turn the knob, push the door open, and walk through it, and then figure out what the hell you want to do with all the things that you see that's inside the room. So, he creates for him the combat training environment. And all he does, is it's in the wrestling match that you're going to see what you're made of, what your capacity is. Don't think you are, know you are. Don't try to hit me, just hit me. And that's a really, really good sign that eventually all students need to be let go, and they have to figure things out on their own. But make sure that as a teacher, you give them enough tools. And I don't know what enough really means, but you have to give them some basic stuff. If I was to be 30, and if you were to ask me, let's go out on a date, I'm 30, you're 30, I'm not really going to ask for things that you need to have that are profoundly mature. My demands are going to be quite infantile and childish. I'm a man, after all. I'm always 15, 20 years behind. So you're 30, I'm 30, I'm actually 15. But that doesn't stop you from asking me out. Now, you and I can go out and we can do all sorts of things. And I can categorize all the things that you and I do as fun, entertaining. If you were to come to me at this age and say, let's go out, I say, for what? So it is very much like dating. You can date a young teacher who has zero experience, or has little experience, but mostly fueled by fantasies and images and the stuff that they've read in books. Like the Buddha helped everyone. Jesus was the man of people. None of those things are true, but all that aside. Then you have someone who's a bit older, a bit more seasoned. And of course, as you get older, you begin to lose abilities. So when you say, I want to be your student, I say, why? I got nothing to offer you. Go read some books. Now, one of the things you'll understand in Japan, for example, if you were to go to some very remote and hidden monasteries, and this is something usually Westerners do. Those who live in Japan don't really do this stuff very often. But because Westerners have, they're like all Tom Cruise. So you go to Japan, you find this monastery, and there comes a point where you can no longer drive, or ride your horse, or ride a donkey, or ride a bike. You have to walk. And it's going to take you some time. And then you get to the monastery. Now you think just because you're there, you knock on the door and the door is open to you and you can walk in and you'll be received well. No. First, you have to keep knocking on the door for 3 days. That's the general rule. You knock on the door 3 days. No one's going to open it. But you have to be persistent. Then someone is going to open the door. And the person who usually opens it is not going to be a novice disciple, but the most senior disciple of the monastery. So yes, what do you want? I am here to become a monk or find awareness. I'm here for Satori. So, oh, really? Okay. We don't really have room for you. Now, you may think they're being racist, but that's really not the case. So you stand outside. You have a couple of options. You can either go back home to Oakland, or you can just put your forehead on the steps for 3 days and 3 nights. And someone is going to look to see if you're there. After 3 days, you sit there. I mean, someone opens the door and says, okay, you can come in. Someone just died. You have a space open for you. They wake you up about 3 in the morning. And it's usually new students are admitted during wintertime, the coldest time. You wake up at 3 in the morning and you have to run around the building for about, 40 minutes. And you have to survive it. Then you have to sit in complete stillness. And just in case there's any movement about you, you'll get belted 3 times on this shoulder, 3 times on this shoulder. And they call it the stick of compassion. That the stick has only one intention, to bring awareness to you. That just remain still. No thoughts, no emotions, and no physical movements. And the point I'm trying to make, we have Zen centers here in Berkeley. We have Sufi centers in Berkeley. We have Hindu temples in Berkeley. Everything's in Berkeley. And all you got to do is just find some guy who's walking around and say, I want to be a student. Oh, beautiful. Yes, we can train you. Or you can find this hidden, invisible monastery somewhere. And it could be someone in this room, where they're not going to open themselves up to anyone. They wait and wait and wait and wait until they find a worthy student. Go watch the movie Zorro with Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas. And that's exactly what the movie's about. You have Zorro, who was once young. He gave, and because of fantasies, he gave his life away to his people. He eventually lost his family. He eventually lost his youth. Now he's old. But when he was a younger man, he gave an emblem, a necklace, to this young kid. This young kid now is a drunk. And he wants to sell this necklace for another glass of beer. And then he takes him to the training ground. And he says, nothing here exists except me and you. That's it. And they train day after day after day after day. And what you have is a very, very seasoned teacher who has a student with a good amount of emotions, but those emotions are not tamed, and he has to tame them. And he tames them not by sitting and doing therapy. He says, I'm not going to walk into your world. You have to come into my world. I can tell you why your father is not such a nice man. But you're going to encounter a lot of your fathers out there. But if I tell you why people become not so nice, then you will understand everybody. And my job is to make you understand everything as opposed to just one thing, I just think, again, going back to your question as to how one finds a teacher, I don't really know. I think if anyone comes out and says, I'm a teacher, you should run the other way. Students need to be tested. Teachers need to be tested. Now, the thing you need to understand about teachers is that we have this idea that they need to be perfect. They can't fall victim to anything. And that's not true. The way I am here, for example, nowhere close when I get home. And when I'm with my kids, I beat them, I hit them, I scream at them all the time. There is no love. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Samuel.
You said a while ago, you find yourself while wrestling, right? Find capacity while wrestling. And I was wondering, is it possible to wrestle with yourself? If it is, how do you wrestle with yourself? Is it you purposely put yourself through some great challenges? Or?
Do you play chess? Okay, you're no good. So if you want to be good at anything, you practice. And what happens while you're, say, practicing chess or playing the piano, Sometimes you realize you're just stuck. You keep playing the same stuff. They're different, music sheets, but nevertheless, it's the same tune, it's the same rhythm, all that stuff. And then you grow tired. And then you begin to wrestle with finding some new tunes. You've been doing rap, now you want to do R&B, then you want to do, I don't know, heavy rock or whatever. And these are all very uncomfortable places to be because they're brand new experiences. So there has to be something about you that wants to taste something different. Or you have tasted something different, but you keep going back to the old stuff. You want to become this new thing, but addiction, habituation, normalcy, comfortability, they always just pull you back to what you're most comfortable with. And so there's also this conflict that's always taking place, Wrestling initially needs to be done or forced upon you, imposed upon you by someone from the outside. You can't do it on your own. You like yourself too much. You don't really challenge yourself too much, unless, let's say you were married once, or you had a girlfriend for like 5 years, you trusted your emotions, you trusted your intellect and its decision-making abilities. 5 years pass by and she leaves you. And like the question that he asked, you're not going to open yourself up easily to anyone. You like people, you like, for example, someone, but the moment you open up, you want to open up, the history comes back and says, beware, she's going to stab you, or could. And then you have this desire to become this new person, but your history, which is a good thing to have in the background, pulls you back and says, I know you're in love with so-and-so, but don't trust human beings. Could you fall in love with yourself? Absolutely. But before you can, you need to find someone on the outside to fall in love with and to have them create environments that are unpleasant. And you need to negotiate, you need to compromise, you need to kind of just go back and forth many, many years until you find some stability, some independence. And then you find some of the things that you're good at. If you're not good at anything, there is nothing you can do. You have to be good at something, or at least you want to have the need to be good at something. You always need someone, always. Of course. Abi? You sure? No, go ahead.
Possible knowledge.
Since you and I are space and time animals, that we live in time, we live in space, and space and time create events. And those events force you to become aware of some things. I remember some time ago, I was coming to school, and on NPR, they had this like, once in a while, this 5 or 10 minute segments where someone would come and tell their story. And this young man was telling a story about how he would drive to work with his father. And his father kept repeating the same old stories over and over and over and over again. And he would become so frustrated. 5 days a week, it's a 2-hour car drive, and his father would always tell the stories, the same stories. And then he said one morning, I go to my father's house to pick him up to go to work, and my mother's crying, my father's dead. And then he said that, I begin to realize that the thing I'm missing most is the fact that I want my father to be next to me, and I want to hear the same stories over and over and over again. And the point I suppose I'm trying to make is you wouldn't know the right or wrong until time passes. And I think the most tragic aspect of being a human being is that right now you're young, you have food, shelter, clothing, there's a good amount of comfortability in your life, stability in your life. You're still young, your body is agile, you know, you can move it here and there. But then when you begin to lose abilities, and you realize that, well, you have given your life to your husband or your wife, you have given your life to your kids, you've given your life to your parents, to your friends, you've been hospitable, anyone who knocks on your door, you invite them in. And now you're 60 or 70 or 80, you can't walk and you can't talk and you're always in pain. And you sit back and you say, man, my life has been a complete waste. I gave my life to all these people except myself. Now, the tragedy of all of this is it seems that wisdom, understanding, insight comes to us when time has passed, when you kind of come to realize your errors, which at the time seem perfectly fine, in fact, profoundly important and valuable. As time passes, you realize it has zero importance. You know, so how do you know? I think you only know in that particular moment in time. Once time passes, you may have a complete different feeling about it. I never imagined myself to look forward to no longer being in the classroom. And I don't know how it happened. You know, I think I'm relatively okay as an instructor. I'm not great, but I'm just mediocre. And I never imagined myself to retire. But now, every morning I wake up and I say, man, I just don't want to go in there. For a couple of reasons. First, you can teach, you know. In an age of technology, people really can kind of have seeds planted inside them by just going to YouTube and, you know, hearing people talk about good things. I mean, everybody out there has something nice to say, you know, but for you to become a student, I mean, student has to be created. You can't just enroll in a class and say, I'm a student. It doesn't work that way, you know. Someone needs to train you to become a good student. Students have to be monogamous, which is very difficult. Students have to be disciplined, which is very difficult. It's kind of like learning the piano, you know. Because to learn to play the piano is very much the same as learning to listen to your teacher and the notes that live inside him. And you need to know what kind of notes, what kind of keys you're pushing, you know, and what your teacher wants you to learn. And so when you realize the complexity of all of that and the horrendous work it takes to become good at anything, whether a student or a teacher or a piano or this or that, you say, well, finally say, you know what, I give up. You know, first because in the 21st century, there's way, way too many distractions. I mean, you can't compete with all the things that are out there. Yeah. And then, you don't know.
So you alluded back to what I was talking about, like the distractions, and there's some of it bombarded.
Yeah.
So you just take it in, or you just ignore it. So
There are all these men in your life, but once you fall in love, once you become intensely attracted to one of them, it seems like all the others just fall off. And I think your relationship with the teacher is very much the same. You can't be polygamous. You can't love Buddha and you can't love Jesus if you're a novice, of course. And you can't love Moses because they have 3 different sets of teachings. You need to believe that you're a sinner to embrace Jesus. If you go to the Buddha and say, I'm a sinner, he'll probably just kick you out. If you're an American, you go to the Buddha and say, I love myself. Or to some Hindu guy, says, no, there is no self to be loved. What the hell are you talking about? So because teachers have their own unique set of teachings, you need to adopt your teacher's culture. And the culture means this. I am 60. I am from Iran. I do philosophy. I am married. I have children. I had a teacher. I have a certain temperament. I have a certain set of experiences. That is my land. That is my climate. That is my culture. You don't need to go to Iran. You don't need to read Rumi. You need to understand and then adopt my culture. Okay? But for you to do that, you have to be intensely passionate about who and what I am, or anyone out there. And once you kind of open that gate and you one morning wake up and you say, I think I really, really, really am passionate about this particular thing, all the other things under the sun just disappears. You don't need to do any work. But when you're in the middle, you're neither here nor you don't hate and you don't love, and in the middle, all the options out there are available to you. And I think if you happen to be a really, 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 really good teacher, you're not going to manipulate anyone to come your way. Yeah, Iranian.
So what are your views on propaganda, and where does propaganda influence go too far to justify the start of the war?
Well, let me.
Does propaganda go too far where you like,
Okay, it's a great question. Let me do it this way. Imagine you take a guy home and you're in love with him, and your mom and dad look at you and say, this guy's an idiot. There's a propaganda. You try to influence your parents by crying, maybe, by telling them how much you love your parents because of their experience and because they know the difficulties of marriage and how difficult it is to keep a marriage together. They use a different propaganda. They kind of beat you down psychologically through their experience. Now, there's a war. Now, they will fight you. Now, when you leave with this guy, your mom and dad have this profound unrest in the bedroom. They can't sleep. Your mom will tell your dad, "What, did you have to really scream?" And your mom will probably going to look at your dad and say, "Did you really have to tell that guy that particular word?" Now, you're going to go home with your fellow, and you guys are going to have your own wrestling match. So, if you live in any social environment, propaganda is a must. It's just taking place left and right. Look, if you examine this classroom alone, the past 15 weeks or so, 10 weeks, what is it that I have been doing? I've been trying to tell you that your life is insignificant, small, cheap. And the ideas that we talk about are grand. It's propaganda. Now, some of you in this class may say, no longer history, no longer psychology, no longer math, I'm just going to major in humanities and philosophy. Who won this battle? I did. Okay? So all of life is about convincing others who and what we are, and that they should validate who and what we are. Now, you guys are not aware of this, but ever since this thing took place in the Middle East, Palestine, and Israel, faculty, staff, not so much administrators, they don't really like to get their hands dirty. All these emails have been going back and forth about Israel is right. No, Palestinians are right. And, they kind of dig up these YouTube clips and these articles, they shove down the other person's throat. And what they want to do is they want to say, listen, I know you're pro-Israel or you're pro-Palestinian. I'm going to give you an article that will kind of create some doubt about your position. And that doubt will turn into conflict, and that conflict will keep you from eating and resting. That's what propaganda is. Art. I mean, I don't know if you know the history of art in the Western tradition from the 3rd century all the way to the 13th, 14th, maybe even 16th. The church is very important. Religious ideas, namely Christianity, is very important. People can't read, people can't write, people can't think. In fact, they shouldn't. So what do? Well, look at the glasses, windows in churches. Look at the doors. Look at the walls. Look at the statues. Look at the sculptures. They're all there for one simple purpose. Make sure that your mind is always geared towards looking up. What do you think porn is? Everything's about propaganda. Next time you go to a party, examine the way you dress. If you don't want people to look at you, fine. If you want people to look at you, on the other hand, you gotta entice them. That's propaganda. You can't survive without it. It's not the credit card that you can't leave the house without it. It's propaganda. Yeah.
This modern world with all the
I'm sorry?
this modern world with all the propaganda trying to get into your head, how do you like really limit your options? If that makes sense? All the choice and opportunities and everything. How do you limit your options? Like that's this for yourself. From all the multiple passions. How do you stay monogamous to one teacher?
You know, I did mention that every day I go home, I spend an hour watching Magnus Carlsen play chess. And the thing that amazes me, him and Roger Federer, the tennis player, they practice about 5-6 hours a day. And I sit back and I say, how can you do that? What else do you need to learn about chess? Or what else do you need to know about like soccer? You know? Or tennis. And I don't know, there is something wrong with these people. I mean, wrong in a good way. You know, is it true that he drinks? Yeah, he drinks once in a while. Is it true that he goes out there and has some fun, plays soccer? Yeah, but his love is chess. Everything else is secondary. You know, and I suppose he, for example, is a freak of nature. He is a guy who wasn't thrown into the world of free choice and free will. His life was predetermined. That the moment he was born, the gods, if there are such things, or psychology, or whatever it is, he says, you're just going to play chess. Now, most of us are not that lucky. You really have to kind of like just flounder around for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years to figure out if you're good at anything. Now, our difficulty is a little bit more complex because in Iran, you have 5 options. In America, you have 50,000 options. So if you live in Iran, you know, when you go to In-N-Out, go to In-N-Out. Well, how many options do they give you? Okay, so you get 3 options. You can kind of play around with it. You can get an animal burger or, you know, shitty burger, whatever the case may be, right? I mean, they're just 5 options, period. Then go to Barney's. They give you like a menu as thick as the Old Testament. Like 900 different burgers. And every like 2 minutes, the waiter comes, can I take your order? No, man, I'm still reading through this big, fat, thick book. I'm not quite sure when I'll be ready, maybe next year, you know? So if you want to suffer from confusion, go to Barney's. And when your food is brought to you, you take a bite and you say, I knew I should have had number 25. You know, and the price is much higher, and the food is not as tasty as In-N-Out. So, you know, we're not the sort of animals that do well with a lot of options. Good luck. You know, I mean, I say good luck to you because some of us in this room are, you know, walking towards the end of our life. You know, dementia and the rest of it, and, you know, life is no longer as interesting. You, on the other hand, you have another 60 years to go. So I feel sad for you. After class, people, give him some love. See you guys on Thursday. Thank you. Thank you.
2 things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
For the event this weekend. And also, I wrote my question before today's talk.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Have a great week.
You too. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Abi, hello. How are you? No, please, no, Abi, please, thank you. How are you? You're good? Yeah. How's the family?
They're well. They're all doing really well. Honestly, Stacy, you have to give us permission to exclude you.
No, I can.
Do everything.
You know, when Hussein was on his deathbed, I remember the last time I saw him. And it was only, after really 20 years that I began to understand what he had done for me and a couple of other people. And it's something I always tell Sarah, whenever she's out of line, I say, everything that we have is because of Hussein. I remember that he would never allow anyone to do anything for him because they assumed that he was special, and it's a really, really great lesson. So, how was your time with your friends? No good, huh? Yes.
Yes, no, we were in.
Really?